How's everyone doing? Good, amazing. Okay, ooh, this sounds better. Good morning, everyone. My name is Kine Gueye, and I will be doing the final briefing for the Climate Change Relief for Urban Areas Act of 2023. Here is our agenda for the day. I'm going to start talking about the problem, then we're going to go into an overview of our bill. I will then talk about the proposed solution, and then what are the metrics of success that we're proposing. So what is the problem? Globally, we're experiencing an exponential growth of our population, and especially our urban population. In the United States, it is estimated that by 2060, the population is going to grow by 79 million, making us grow from 336 million today to 415 million by 2060. And by then, it is estimated that 89% of that population is going to be living in urban areas. With the increase in urban population, we're also seeing an increase in average surface temperatures. By 2100, it is estimated that the average surface temperatures in the US are going to increase by 3 to 10 degrees Fahrenheit. And if you look at the graph that we have on the left, you can see that the number of heat waves per year has been increasing over the years across the major cities in the United States. So with the increase in temperature, we also see a greater impact on the human population. The National Institute of Health has estimated that by the end of the century, 50 to 110,000 people will die of heat-related illnesses annually. And unfortunately, these trends are not equally distributed among the population because BIPOC communities, BIPOC standing for Black, Indigenous people of color, and people of low income are at greater risk. As noted by the New York Mayor's Office of Climate and Environmental Justice, historical practices such as redlining and systemic racism have led to a cycle of disinvestment in communities, mainly communities of color, low income, with poor housing and a lack of green space, making them at greater risk for these changes in temperatures. And we're now going to talk about one of these environmental justice community, which is South Bronx, that some of us have had the chance to visit, in order to contextualize this trend that we're seeing. So South Bronx is an environmental justice neighborhood in New York City and is one of the poorest congressional districts in the country. Between 2011 and 2021, we have seen a 7.5% increase in the population, going from 1,396,000 to 1,501,000 people approximately. With this increase in the population, we have also seen an increase in surface temperature. According to a study, in the summer of 2018, South Bronx residents were exposed to over 1,300 hours of very hot heat, which is considered as temperature between 105 degrees Fahrenheit to 130 degrees Fahrenheit, which is significantly higher than the city's average at that time, which was 86 degrees Fahrenheit. Coincidentally or not, the demographic of the population of South Bronx makes the issue a little bit more complicated, being 64% Hispanic and 31% Black, and Black New Yorkers being twice as likely to die of heat-related illnesses according to the New York's Health and Environment portal. This leaves a significant proportion of the population that is at greater risk. And race is not the only demographic that comes into play with this issue. Here we have a comparative study of South Bronx and Upper East Side in Manhattan. On the top, the values, you can see that South Bronx, which is a low-income community, has significant less tree canopy cover and have temperatures that are on average 12.1 degrees Fahrenheit higher than the city's average temperature. And at the bottom, you can see that Upper East Side Manhattan, which is way richer, 0% percentage of poverty, that has a 52% percentage of tree canopy and only has disparities that are 3.1 degrees Fahrenheit higher than the average city's temperature, which is a 9-degree Fahrenheit difference between the two. So we see that lower tree canopy leads to higher temperatures in areas with higher poverty. And with urbanization trends as well as the prediction of climate change, environmental justice communities will not only have to deal with the effects of these disparities, but they will also have to deal with the effects of the destruction of our natural systems. Nationwide, we see an increase in air pollution causing significant health issues such as asthma, with communities like South Bronx that have an asthma rate case that is 21 times higher than anywhere else in the state. We also see an increase in extreme precipitation resulting in flooding events and also CSO events, which stands for combined sewer overflows, which is when the stormwater exceeds the sewer system capacity and storm and wastewater is sent to a nearby water body. We also see an increase in the disruption of our natural system that is worsening not only the health and living conditions of the members of these communities, but that is also increasing the energy burden they have, leading to higher proportions of their earnings going towards cooling and healthcare, that earning which is already pretty low. And although we're using South Bronx as an example to illustrate these trends, I want to note and stress the fact that these are trends that we see nationwide across the United States. We have seen comparative studies in Phoenix, Arizona, Houston, Texas, and Chicago, Illinois, showing that this is a problem that is happening in environmental justice everywhere in the United States, and this is why this is a federal bill. As land is changing, the population is growing, becoming denser, and people are moving into industrial spaces, and there is a need to redesign these spaces to increase the available green spaces in order to alleviate the burdens which are higher for people of color and low income. So, to develop urban green infrastructure to mitigate the rising temperatures and to lower the surface temperatures in these environmental justice communities across the US, this bill has been developed. The Climate Change Relief for Urban Areas Act of 2023 is a bill that has two different funding mechanisms. The first one is the forestry assistance that prioritizes the diversion of existing funding to disadvantaged communities and groups from the previous act, the Cooperative Forestry Assistance Act of 1978. For this, $1.5 billion was allotted for forestry assistance. $1.5 billion was allotted for forestry assistance on the period of 2023 to 2028. The second one is the rooftop garden grants. And for this, it established grants for public school in disadvantaged communities for them to implement rooftop gardens on those schools. And for this, $30 million was allotted over the course of 2023 to 2028. It is important to note that both of these funding mechanisms prioritize creating green spaces in historically disadvantaged communities. One uses already pre-existing funding and one makes new funding available. In order to assess and identify the communities that will be receiving these funds, we need to create two different metrics, the tree equity score and then the garden equity score. So the tree equity score considers factors such as tree canopy, temperature, income, employment, race, age, and health factors, and it is to identify the environmental justice community with a low tree canopy that needs an increased number of green spaces. The second one is the garden equity score, and it uses factors such as location, population density, race, incidence of respiratory illness, number of urban gardens, food sovereignty, and average surface temperatures, and it is for public school and environmental justice communities. So how will this work? Urban vegetation lowers surface temperatures through three different mechanisms. The first one is shading, which decrease the amount of heat that is going to be absorbed by the buildings and the surface concrete. The second one is the reflection of incoming solar radiation back to the atmosphere. And the third one is evapotranspiration, which is a mechanism similar to sweating, but just in trees and vegetation. A study in Arizona has found that increasing the tree canopy from 10% to 25% reduced temperature by up to 2 degrees Celsius, which is approximately 35 degrees Fahrenheit. And another one in Sacramento found that shading and ambient cooling can result in energy savings of 30% for home near green spaces. Rooftop gardens are also able to lower temperatures. We observed that New York City public school can lack air conditioning and are made of heat-trapping concrete that traps the heat and makes the energy burden higher for these schools. We see that the temperature above green roofs can be 7 to 10 degrees cooler than bare roofs, and in Washington, D.C., a study found that green roofs can reduce building energy used by 0.7%. Although the mitigation of the rise of temperatures is the main focus of this bill, we also have additional environmental and social benefits. Public health benefits is the decrease of heat-related illnesses and death, filtering out air and decreasing asthma rates, and also providing access to cheap, healthy, and fresh food to the member of these environmental justice communities. The second one is stormwater management. It reduces total water flow through ground infiltration, reduces peak flow burdens on sewers, and trap pollutants in runoff from getting into waterways. The third one is decreasing energy building, providing insulation with reduced cooling and heating demand for the rooftop gardens, for the buildings, the public schools. On top of that, we haven't mentioned, but there's also an educational benefit because there's a requirement to implement environmental science curriculum in the schools where this is going to be implemented. With benefits also come challenges. The environmental benefits of urban green spaces and urban green infrastructures are not 100% sure. And depending on certain interventions, it could help or harm communities. Additionally, socioeconomic challenges include political partisanship level at federal level, limited resources at the local level and federal levels, and gentrification at the community level. So the measure of success, currently we're targeting communities with a tree equity score of below 70. The goal is to increase their tree equity score to 75 and increase canopy cover by 20% to 50%. And for garden equity score, we're targeting public schools. The goal in the first 3 years is to build community gardens within walking distance of approximately 600 meters and increasing the available green spaces. So in summary, building urban climate resilience is a long-term process and requires us looking at key benchmarks such as tree equity and also lowering surface temperatures. And the end goal is to meet the needs of disadvantaged communities. Before I end this presentation, I would like to thank this wonderful team that has done a tremendous amount of research throughout the summer, and also our very amazing Professor Louise Rosen, who's just amazing. Thank you. Do you have any questions for me? Oh, a lot of questions.
Hi, great job. I was just wondering, so in terms of like preventing like communities being disadvantaged through gentrification, like does the bill entail anything about like just green enough initiatives where there are only like small amounts of the integration of like urban green spaces that still benefit these disadvantaged communities, or is it not very, specific in the bill?
So it is not specific yet in terms of like the percentage of tree cover or the amount of green spaces that is needed. And that is also because there comes other issues into play, like such as geology and spacing issues. There are some communities, when we look at the tree equity score tool, that just cannot have a 50% tree coverage compared to other communities. So it is very difficult to say exactly how many trees or how many urban green infrastructures will be implemented per communities, because there's a lot of factors and a lot of variables that come into deciding that. I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, thank you.
No problem.
Thank you, Kine, for your presentation. I was wondering if you are aware if these solutions work better in certain types of materials. For instance, sustainable cement has been under development. Are you aware if the material that the solution is used has any role?
So during our research, we learned about cool roofs, which use materials for the building of those roofs. That uses material that absorb more heat to also that absorb less heat to lower the energy burden of the building. So there are materials that are used to build those roofs that will sort of alleviate this effect. However, this bill is not focusing on that, because that is more of a long-term, of a short-term change compared to green roofs, which are long-term, which have additional benefits such as providing healthy and fresh foods to members of the community and mitigate stormwater management, whereas cool roofs, what you're talking about is called cool roofs, only are able to lower the temperatures, and for also a shorter period of time than urban green roofs.
Thank you.
I've got the mic.
Wait, you're... Oh.
Thank you very much for the presentation. It was great. I'm curious, does the bill specify which kind of trees would be planted? Specifically, does it specify that the trees need to be able to survive well in these difficult urban environments?
So I have a slide for you. Let me find it. It's right here. Species selection. So the bill does not specify exactly which types of trees are going to be implemented, and it also, because it depends on as I mentioned, this is a federal bill. It's something that is to be implemented everywhere in the United States. In cities like New York City, it is becoming wetter. But if you go to Arizona, the temperatures and like the environmental conditions are very different. So it is very difficult to say exactly which species are going to be planted. But we're looking for species of plants and trees that can survive in very harsh urban environments where they might have less irrigation than if it was a forest, and that can survive these very harsh temperatures. But we don't have a list yet of the exact species that will be planted.